Thank you very much, Carrie, and good morning, everyone. First of all, thank you very much for having us in this esteemed audience and forum. It's my second time here. Last time, I think I was announcing more things that could be coming. Now, what I want to do is give you a little overview of what we're currently doing. There are 14 colleagues from 14 member states in the room. Some of you might already know all this because you are in touch with us in our CCS expert group or in other fora. But I'm trying to synthesize this also for international colleagues from the US, from Japan, from Taiwan, and everyone here basically. So what I'm going to do is to tell you sort of what is the Commission doing on what we call industrial carbon management. And that term comes from a communication that was published at the beginning of 2024. It includes everything you think of as CCUS, but also industrial carbon removal, so biogenic CO2 that is captured and then stored, as well as CCU. So CCU is also part of it. But we have a framework now in place, which consists of three elements. It's the strategy, which has been reconfirmed by the new von der Leyen Commission. So there was a break in the Commission, but the president is the same, and she remembered that we had a strategy in 2024, and it was mentioned again in the Clean Industrial Deal strategy, which is the new strategy of the Commission for decarbonization. And it's all focused on net zero industry. What is net zero industry? Is hard to abate in any industry we have in Europe as this moment, and we want to keep also in a net zero economy. And for that, many of them need to capture CO2 and store it, and that's a big challenge. And to address this challenge, also the last Commission has proposed and negotiated a regulation which is called or was called the Net Zero Industry Act, but it's now Regulation 24/1735. And it recognizes these kind of projects as strategic net zero projects. They should be supported by member states with faster permitting, but it also defines a storage injection capacity target for the union, which is 50 million tons. And so I'm focusing on NZIA because I think there the most progress has been made since the last presentation from us to this forum, where we talk more about the strategy. But before we do that, um, a small word, or actually a big word, on European industries. We talked a lot about yesterday, and it was very nice to talk about public acceptance. For us, ICM policy is an angle of public acceptance for climate policies because it is about supporting and guaranteeing industrial jobs in Europe for people who live and work in these companies. And these companies, many of them, have already clear ideas how they get to net zero. And a lot of them find that they need some capturing of CO2 in order to go to net zero. And we have a funding instrument that we run in the team that I work in. It's called the Innovation Fund, where we support these kind of innovative ways of abating CO2 emissions with grants if people deploy these. But it started in 2020, and by now we have a portfolio of projects. We see ourselves as investors into decarbonizing industries, which makes up a lot of capacity for what we are discussing here. You see the figures there. 18.6 million tons will be supported by EU money to capture CO2 over 10 years. That's annual, and then 10 years. And we already support injection capacity in storage sites to almost 12 million tons per year again. In total, we are investing 5 billion euros into this aspect of climate policy. In total, we have so far committed 12 billion. So that's a big chunk of what we have invested into this, and it competes with clean heat, other clean technologies. And we launched the latest call in December last year, and we closed it on the 25th of April. We are currently digging into the data, and later this week there will be more details announced. But what I can already tell you is that we are hugely oversubscribed. We have offered 2.4 billion euros. We got requests for more than 21 billion euros of projects. And roughly a third, I come back to the roughly, a third of these applications is ICM relevant projects. So with one ICM type component in it, it's a bit difficult for us to track them because they're not necessarily applying as ICM. So that's another complication. But it shows that there is willingness in industry to use that technology and to rely on CCS to keep operating in a net zero economy. So that's where the NZIA regulation comes in, because it, as I said, has an objective, a legal objective to achieve injection capacity so that these industries can find storage sites in order to actually execute their plans. It also has obligations for member states to be more transparent about possibilities to store CO2, data that is available. I come back to this a bit. And to now look at this annually and report annually about the demands and the needs of their own industries, which we see when we offer money, we see them applying, but they're not necessarily telling, the companies not necessarily telling their own governments their plans. So now we want governments also to be in dialogue with industries. And that then relates to why, because they should get permitting support. So you are all, I think many of you will be aware of Article 23, which is the implementation arm of the 50 million ton target. So it's an obligation to producers of oil and gas from the European Union to actually invest into building that capacity. So they don't have to build the storage sites themselves. They can do it every which way, but they need to deliver injectable operational storage capacity by the end of 2030 in the Union. We have been very busy over the last couple of months, first to gather the relevant production figures and the names of the producers from member states, and then to calculate their share of the obligation. This is now in the final stages. There was a public consultation between March 19 and mid of April on what's called delegated regulation, which sets up the rules how we calculate. And then there will be a commission decision taking the decision and obligating these companies. And that decision is currently in the machinery that we have to get the commission to look at things and then decide things. And the current planning is that it will be adopted by the commission, both these acts, on the 21st of May. I put it in square brackets because I'm not in control anymore on that timing, but that's what's in the system. However, member states also had to already report to us under Article 21. Based on the law, it would have been by the end of December 2024. We gave member states until the mid of January to do so. Many did, not all of them, but you can find all reports we got from member states already on our brand new sub-website on the 50 million ton target. It's linked here, and I will put some footnotes into the slides when you get it so that you have this. So a little snapshot of the results of these reports. When you look at it together, member states may have to make geological data publicly available. First, to tell which areas in my country CO2 storage could happen. Here, 18 member states reported. 4 reported that they have no areas because they have a ban on CCS. So that's still the case. 7 member states even have databases already. So not just everywhere or in this part or offshore or onshore, but rather where exactly. When it comes to making geological data transparent, that is geological data that the member states either already have or that comes from production sites that are decommissioned or are aimed for decommissioning or announced, notified for decommissioning. 16 member states reported, but only 4 member states have this in place. This is a mechanism, a rule that should have been in place by the end of December last year. So that's a next discussion that we will have with member states. Also, the annual progress reports, it's a starting point. 11 member states actually reported, and they have this. In those reports, they relate very much to what is called the National Energy and Climate Plans, which also is a planning and forward-looking tool for member states, which member states had to renew for the 2030 target last year, by summer last year. But we have a number of projects that are already known by member states and reported to us. So 62 projects are named or indicated by member states that will be sort of in the context of ICM, sort of in various stages of maturity. But only 2 member states have sort of calculated injection and transport capacity needs, which is sort of a very important aspect in order to, let's say, reassure investors that it's worthwhile investing into these kind of infrastructures because there is a need. And then lastly, also sort of member states need to report on national support measures, because these do exist also on a national level. It's not just the innovation fund, but also on the national level. Many of you might know the SDE++ program in the Netherlands, which was very much a front runner in doing things that we also do now with the innovation fund. And there, 9 member states have existing measures, and 2 have reported to us that they are working on new measures that are not yet in place, but will be in place. So that's a good thing. But it's also a very important or potentially useful thing for you here or for the CO2 GeoNet colleagues, because these will be annual reports, and they will always be published on the same website from us as soon as we get them. So there should be a progression in this, and we are in discussion with member states already to structure the information a bit more to make sure that it's comparable from year to year. There will be a template that we are going to issue to member states during this year, so that the next reports hopefully have a bit more meat on the bone, as it were. All of this is input to us because we also have an obligation to report to Council and Parliament annually about the progress in reaching the 50 million tons, but also progress in how the market develops, because many of the legislators want to know more how is that demand really materializing in the European Union, and what needs to be done in order to help having it. So in a summary, there is a flurry of information coming from the Net Zero Industry Act. Already this year, as I said, there is the adoption of the 2 acts, and then the list of obligated entities and the list of entities that are excluded because they are under the de minimis threshold. But these entities already in June need to tell us how they plan to comply with the regulation. What's the plan to provide this operational injection capacity, and which will inform our own report, the monitoring report that we plan roughly Q3 this year to then adopt and inform Council and Parliament, and of course the public. And this then goes on. An important stop or a milestone is also next year at the end of June, because at that point, member states need to define the penalties for obligated entities that would choose to not comply with the regulation. And that's of course a very important aspect. Again, here, both the entities and the member states have annual reporting. So what we have set up internally is some help from a contractor to actually track the progress, and then use our reports to give you a summary or sort of an overview of the report, so that if you want, you can read all the reports yourselves, but you might not need to do that if you want to ask. Importantly, then, for us, another milestone is an assessment, where we need to assess many things, but mostly it's about potential derogations. Is there enough demand for the injection capacity and for the timelines? But also was very much a wish of the European Parliament in the negotiations. Is there a need for another target like this for post 2030? And if so, is there a need for another obligation post 2030? From where we are now in the Commission, we don't think that's necessary. We hope that by 2030 we have demonstrated that there is a business case for building these sites. And ZIA doesn't regulate how they are operated, how they are monetized. It just regulates or forces them to be available. So we hope that we have actually a business case by the end of the decade, and then we don't need another obligation, but let's see. So last 2 slides, knowing that my time is already up. quickly, so we have some ongoing activities, some of which will come somehow to you, or you will hear about from workshops. They relate to what we call incidental associated substances, so that's impurities in CO2 streams, which have to do with CO2 specs and CO2 standardization, where we want to look into capture technologies and also sensitivities from an environmental point on the storage side of things. We are also working on preparing what we have announced in the communication, which is an aggregation platform for CO2. The model is Aggregate EU, where sort of the union member states come together and buy gas commonly, comes from the energy crisis. But here we plan, or we think we need something like this to create a market for storage capacity that is fluid and can particularly support smaller emitters with smaller volumes, which to have more sort of bidding power. And then we are also looking in financial mechanisms and financial security, how we could make that cheaper for the storage operators, and at the same time less burdensome or less complicated for member states when they do storage permits. And lastly, and that's an activity led by my colleagues in DG ENER, with whom we cooperate very closely on all of these issues, is an impact assessment for the announced regulatory framework proposal, which is announced for 2026 for a regulatory framework for CO2 transport. And we are still debating whether storage is part of it or not. So that's a place to watch. There will be another industrial carbon management forum conference at the end of 2025. Don't tell anyone that I told you, but it will be in Greece this time, and the date will be announced in the next couple of weeks. So it will be an important public consultation milestone also for the regulatory framework work, as it were. Last and most importantly, there is money on the table also for research into capture technologies, into impurities and their effects on transport infrastructures, and also CCU in order to sort of in applications where they would replace fossil fuel inputs to industrial processes. And two very important issues, topics that we hope we can drive forward with your help. One is what we call the ICM knowledge sharing platform, also already announced and described in the strategy, where we will procure help to build this platform. The idea is helping the projects that are going to deploy these technologies to talk to each other and learn from each other to minimize risks and create co-learning sort of in a sort of space that is dedicated to this process. Of course, again here, it's something we do already for our portfolio inside the Innovation Fund portfolio, but we think we shouldn't limit it to Innovation Fund funded projects. Anyone should have access to this kind of learning. And then most importantly, but we will talk about this in the post-forum workshop tomorrow, a bit more in detail, is the European Investment Atlas for Potential Storage Sites. I quote here in italics what is said about it in the work program of Horizon. That's going to be a call, so proponents can apply and propose a mechanism. 5 million euros is in the pot for this, and it should be starting this year. So the call will be launched this year, and we hope that we can launch this activity this year. And it has a number of aspects that relate to geological data, also the data that we hope we will get under Article 21 into the Atlas from member states where they already have it or where they will get it in the future. With this, I thank you for your attention, and I'm looking forward to any questions you might have, in particular also after the panel. So happy to answer any questions you might have. Thank you very much.